Across the decades, Dennis Menace's Mr. Wilson. Battle of the Network shows. Join Rick Brooks and Mike Kogel as they explore the TV of the 70s and 80s through hand-picked episodes of their favorite and not-so-favorite series.
Welcome to Battle of the Network shows. I'm Mike.
And I'm Rick. Hello, everyone.
And today we're doing something we did with the Munsters, which is we're talking about a in-era cartoon version of the show and also a out-of-era live-action version of the show.
That is right, yes.
Yes. In this case, Dennis the Menace, which, of course, is based on a newspaper comic of the same name. This is the American one, not to be confused with the British one if you're listening in England.
Point, yes.
I know there's a different name. I don't know what it is there. And we also did something a little different, which is we just watched the episode of the cartoon.
That's right.
We used my DVD set of, it turns out, only half of season 1, and a random number generator, our good friend, to pick the episode that has 3 segments. And then Rick suggested a one from the TV show, the live action show from the late 50s, early 60s. So we'll talk about all of that. So 3 cartoon segments and 1 episode of the live action show.
Yes. So a lot of Dennis to look forward to.
Yes. And if I'm not mistaken, you're a bit of a fan of the comic.
Oh, yeah. Growing up, Dennis was one of my favorite characters and read a lot of paperbacks that collected the comic strip and the comic books that were based on the comic strip. So not done by Hank Ketchum, but done by other ones. And I used to get like some comic books, but actually like what I really love with the digests, which I have some of them here. But the digest would reprint the comic book stories in convenient kid-sized digest form. And boy, there was some good stuff in those. And
so those are still narrative.
Yeah, like short stories mostly. What I really liked, too, was they would have like special, bigger comic editions. And I had some of these, too, where they'd go to like Washington, D.C. Dennis the Menace goes to Hawaii.
Right.
You know, and all sorts of different themes and almost travelogues.
And a friend of the show, Amy, shared with us the one where they traveled the globe, right?
Yeah. They did all kinds of stuff. And like the Hawaii one, I was reading the recent hardback collection, and it had a lot of bonus material just talking about how Hank Ketchum sent the creators of the Hawaii comic book to Hawaii to do research. They had he paid for them like a 2-week trip to Hawaii to gather material and get reference material, which is kind of cool.
That's pretty swell boss there.
Yeah. At the time, I don't think that was done very much, but it certainly showed like in the result they had. It just gave them ideas stuff to draw and all kinds of reference stuff. So yeah, cool stuff. But as a kid, I really loved that. It was kind of like a good way to learn about different cultures. And I remember the Washington D.C. one, which I used to have that. I don't have that right now, but they made a big deal out of like the cherry blossoms, and Dennis would go to the Pentagon. So, they kind of put in all kinds of stuff in there. But yeah, and the comic strip, I also had, in addition to reading it in the daily paper, I had like some old paperbacks that would reprint the original panels. It was a strip, I guess it was actually a comic panel, and Sundays, it'd be like a comic strip in color.
I don't remember reading it a lot.
No?
But like a lot of things like that, having awareness. A lot of my awareness came from Dairy Queen.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that was big. Dairy Queen was like Mecca back then, man. A trip to Dairy Queen was a treat.
I especially remember, for some reason, there was a Dairy Queen in the next town over, and I mostly that was more like a walk-in one, like not a full. They probably had the food too. Mm-hmm. I just remember going there to get ice cream.
Yeah.
But then the South Lake Mall in Georgia had a Dairy Queen in the mall, and I remember eating there a lot, and the cups and everything had Dennis on it.
Yeah,
they probably had activity books and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it was a popular hangout for like little league baseball teams. After a game or something, go get ice cream. I do remember, and I wish I had some Dennis stuff from back in that era, but he would be all over like the Dairy Queen. Yeah, the cups, the plates and everything, and their advertising for many years. I think it was
until like 2000 or something.
Yeah. I think like 30 years he was basically the company spokesman, which is a heck of a run.
Yeah.
So for me, I think so. In order, it would be probably of my familiarity with Dennis. It would be 1, the comic books, 2, comic strip, 3, Dairy Queen. 4, the live action TV show, and 5, the cartoon, probably the animated series, I should say.
Yeah, I would say mine would be Dairy Queen.
Yeah,
maybe the comic. I mean, once I was reading the comics every day, I was reading it. but the cartoon for professional reasons.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the TV show. I also, at the end of this, I would like to rank all of those based on how menacing he is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Kind of borrowing from the Comics Curmudgeon website,
Okay.
where, if you're not familiar with it, we've probably brought it up before, but every day, this guy, Josh, reads comics and makes wiseacre comments about them. And many of, when he talks about Dennis the Menace, often he's questioning, how menacing the particular gag is.
Yeah.
For some reason, just that. It makes me laugh.
He does have varying levels of menaceness.
Yeah. Yes.
And even like Fantagraphics for a while, I think they stopped, but they were reprinting the complete Dennis in hardback form. And I read probably the first 5 or 6 of those. And it was interesting seeing the early days of the character. Like when I was growing up and talking about those reprints, the comic book Dennis was a little bit different than the panel Dennis, but the panel Dennises I was reading were probably more from like the 60s and 70s. But the early early 1950s Dennis is a lot different than the later Dennis and probably the now Dennis, I guess.
Is he a true menace?
Yes. He was wilder and just even had like a cruder look and like just kind of more of a, I don't know, just more of a, menace is a good word for it, actually. Like there was more danger associated with him in the early days of the panel.
Interesting. Yeah, he doesn't seem dangerous anymore. I mean, a lot of the gags, and I'm sure this was going back a long time, are just sort of him, like saying things he overheard his parents say.
Yeah, yeah.
And embarrassing them.
Right. Or like tracking dirt into the kitchen.
Yes.
But there's a difference between, and then there's that, and then there's mischief, which is a level up, but like outright menace. I think there's more of that, like in the early days.
Right.
And even in the comic book. And actually, this is something that we can get into, but like the other characters are a lot different.
Yeah.
I think like his dad is totally different traditionally in the comic strip and the comic books than he is in any of these other incarnations.
Interesting.
Like he's actually like he's angry. Like some of the funniest things I think are just seeing him like blow his top, and he gets mad. He yells it in bold face type and capital letters, and he just really just seems to have like a kind of an antagonistic relationship with Dennis.
Wow. Is that so? That's in the old ones or just overall?
I think in the old, like in the comic books, I'd say like into the 70s, well into the 50s, 60s, and even the 70s. Like, and it's always like Alice, his mom, is always the one calming him down. Like, oh, Henry, he's just a boy or something. And every now and then, it's not like abusive or anything, but it's like him reacting like most normal people would be to some of the stuff that Dennis does, and him just being upset and sometimes just worried about what Dennis is going to do. Like because Dennis sometimes causes real destruction.
Yeah. For some reason, that just made me think of Calvin and Hobbes, which you don't really hear reference to Dennis the Menace much, but clearly there's an unintentional or intentional connection there too. I mean, one could argue he's more of a menace than Dennis.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking about his parents, sort of.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't blow their tops usually. They're usually kind of slow burn kind of reactions.
Yeah.
But
I think
there's an element of that.
Yeah.
On the TV show, it seems like those roles are reversed. I mean, the mom's never really getting super mad, other than making him sit in the corner or something. But,
Right.
But his dad seems to be a little more understanding of him.
Yeah, I think so. He's just more mild-mannered in general.
Yes, he's very word cleaver kind of dad.
Not at all. In the comic books, he seems like a guy who's like just a harried, adult who has a tough job and can't get any relaxation at home. He a lot of times he just wants to, read the paper and smoke his pipe.
Right.
And, Dennis bothers him. And, another thing, too, I think a big difference is, I think in the panel in the comic books, Mr. Wilson is not nearly the huge presence he is in, like, the TV shows. Like, in the TV shows, he's practically, like, the co-main character.
Yes.
Especially in the live-action one. But, he's not at all, like, in every single story, like he seems to be in a lot of the TV stuff. You almost... His absence is felt when he's not in the TV, but in the comic books, it seems like there was a lot of material where, he was a regular character, of course, but there wasn't a whole lot. And I think, especially, like, the live-action TV show, the Dennis's parents are a lot more deferential to Mr. Wilson.
Yeah.
Whereas in the comic books and the comic strips, I think especially the comic books, it's a little bit more almost antagonistic, because Wilson's like actually mad at them for raising him and always kind of like, yelling at them and stuff. And there's also some like more kind of a competitive nature between Mr. Wilson and Mr. Mitchell. They're more like, sort of frenemy neighbors than they are like in the TV show where it's like, Mr. Wilson, like, I think, like I said, deferential. I think they treat him with more respect just because he's older and retired. Whereas Wilson's a lot more grumpy. I think he comes off as a much bigger baby face in the TV show than he does in the comics.
I mean, in cartoon, he's pretty cantankerous.
Yeah. I think the cartoon Mr. Wilson is more faithful than the live action one to the source material.
Right. And I wonder if the stories in the cartoon are closer to like in keeping with some of those comics. Like I imagine the comics got a little. I mean, the comic books. Just the fact that you go into Hawaii.
True,
But it had to, I mean, because with either of these, the idea of expanding a one-panel gag strip into something with some sort of narrative is a challenge.
that's why I'd recommend that people seek out the comic books, because they're really, it's like a whole nother Dennis. It's really almost like a totally different creation, and they're very good. They're well done. Like the drawing is good, and the stories are very funny. I mean, I have, I think, all three. I think one that you got me actually, the hardback collections that Paper Cuts was doing, and unfortunately, I guess they weren't selling enough, so they stopped that series.
Yeah.
I'd love to get a nice hardback version of the Dennis in Washington D.C., but they're really good stuff, and they have like a lot of prose in these books talking about how they admired the work of Al Weisman and Owen Fitzgerald. I think were the two big Dennis artists, but it's really good stuff. I mean, they're really very entertaining comic books. I grew up on those, and the TV show. It wasn't until Nick at Night started showing, and we got Nick at Night, that I was even really exposed. I think I don't remember it being on in reruns at all when I was a kid. I'm sure it was, but I didn't watch it.
Yeah, I remember seeing it some, and like those opening credits for some reason really stick with me. Partly because I'm annoyed that they're not seeming to reference the comic at all in terms of it. I mean, it's animated, but it's just like that whirlwind, the fire hat and stuff, which is actually kind of a cool little design. But you have a character that already is a cartoony character you could show. But I understand. But I do remember seeing it sometime as a kid, and just, or maybe it was Nick and I, sometime, various times, and just thinking it didn't quite feel right. I think because he's beyond the first season, he's pretty, he's a little old for, and he gets kind of, Jay North seems kind of tall.
Yeah.
And Mr. Wilson always struck me. I think he's very funny, but he's very different than the comics. And I mean, he's sort of milquetoasty and nervous and things. He's not this oversized person and a hothead and all that.
Yeah, there's not the bluster.
Yeah, but I've mellowed in my in my feeling that things have to be 100% accurate.
Yeah.
The Dennis cartoon, again, we'll talk a little more specifically, but of course, I mean, it looks really on model.
Yeah.
As much as a Deke cartoon can.
Yes.
I mean, it gets Dennis's weird eyebrows behind his hair thing.
Yeah.
So, but again, it does kind of get into some outlandish stories that are beyond just a kid kind of causing problems.
Yeah. I'd forgotten just like the opening theme sequence.
Right.
It spends a big chunk of the time with them in outer space.
Yes. And underwater. And
Yeah.
which I don't remember happening on there, but
No.
I mean, I'm pretty sure it's maybe the last episode. It involves time travel.
Oh, okay.
And the Wright brothers. So,
I think I think the comic books would do stuff like that, but they would always frame it like as a dream or something.
Yeah.
And maybe they would do it like a thing where wait a minute, is it a dream? Like kind of like Santa Claus episodes of TV shows or
Right.
something. Like Dennis would wake up and tell him about some adventure he had, and I was in the desert and I was riding camels and everything. Like, oh, Dennis, come on! And then they'd see sand under his bed or something like that.
Right. That's kind of, I mean, the stuff in the opening credits I kind of take is almost what they're imagining. Like they're probably in cardboard boxes or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. Maybe not.
I think there's some pretty outlandish episodes.
Yes.
Of these, but yeah, I remember it being on, but it wasn't something I watched regularly.
No.
And then when we were exposed to it for professional reasons, we saw a whole bunch of Dennis.
Yes, we did. And yet somehow only a fraction.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do we want to talk about the cartoon first or the show?
Well,
The cartoon is fresh in our minds.
maybe we should do the cartoon. I mean, this is kind of like our big animated show of the season, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
maybe we should give the animation its due. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And what animation?
Yes. Right. The height of Deke taking over the cartoon world.
Yes.
Of course, makers of Inspector Gadget, Heathcliff, and
Yeah.
Real Ghostbusters.
Yeah, a lot of these that I remember kind of being on around about the same time.
Yeah,
You said their peak.
And we mentioned the opening credits and the amazing opening song, rockin' saxophone driven.
Yeah, it's almost like raucous.
Yes.
Like it's. Let me see here. It's almost like what it kind of reminds me of here, like in Sweating to the Oldies when Richard Simmons is like getting down, and
Yeah.
he's got a band and you can kind of picture the band like dressed a little garishly and kind of like rocking out. I picture like those guys like that would be in like a Richard Simmons house band. Playing this like live or whatever and just like really getting into it, and kind of getting down.
Could you picture Huey Lewis in the News?
Ooh, I hadn't, but yeah. Wow, I might have to rethink this now.
Yeah.
You see, getting a little Huey Lewis vibe?
I don't know. For some reason, the style of saxophone made me think of Huey Lewis.
That's good, yeah. Maybe like a Billy Vera and the Beaters, maybe.
Yes. Definitely an 80s band with a slight early 60s vibe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's I can see that.
But written by Levy and Saban, writers of so many theme songs.
Uh,
So it's not, I mean, it has some lyrics, but they're pretty much just Dennis the Menace.
yeah, Dennis the Menace over and over again.
Yeah. But, they wrote He-Man. That only has one line.
Yeah, that's true. It's catchy.
Actually, Inspector Gadget, that doesn't have lyrics, does it?
That's right. It's just the name and then the.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, Go Gadget Go, I guess.
Go Gadget, yeah.
Like a catchphrase, a title, and a few oohs.
So, these guys wrote all tons of cartoon theme songs, and then Saban at least became a kids entertainment mogul later.
Yeah.
And even though I've heard that story before, I still find it confusing.
Yeah.
And there's a 20-something minute cartoon, and that goes on, it seems like, for 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's a pretty long sequence.
Yeah.
For something that doesn't have lyrics and doesn't really set up the premise of anything.
Right.
It just shows like wild scenes from Dennis's life, I guess.
Yes. But it's 2 or 3 minutes of animation. They don't have to do it again.
Yes. Well put.
So, as we said, we did the random number generator. This DVD set has 33 episodes, and the generator came up with 31. 3 segments. Boss gets scalped. Mr. Dennisstein, or Dennisstein.
Yeah, originally I was thinking Mr. Dennisstein, and after the first segment I was thinking, where are they going with this one?
Yes.
But I guess I would say Mr. Dennis Stein.
Dennisstein, Franken.
Yeah.
Or Steen.
Yeah.
And Long Green Machine, is that what?
Lean
Green Machine.
Jumping Machine.
Lean Green Jumping Machine, which we'll get to. So the first segment opens with Henry coming home. He's in a tizzy. He's got his necktie caught in his briefcase. He apparently does not know how to open his briefcase.
No.
Voiced as Mr. Wilson is by the great Phil Hartman. And his classic sitcom plot. His boss is coming over for dinner at the last minute.
Yeah, Alice has no notice of this.
Yep. And she lets him know there's a problem because Dennis and his friends are there. They're having a meeting of their Wigwam Club.
Yeah, the Wigwam Club.
Yes.
She just joined apparently, and
after being at a Wigwam camp.
Yeah.
And the Wigwam Club involves them walking around in Native American costumes.
Full regalia.
Yeah.
Including makeup.
Yep.
Yes.
A couple of the boys are shirtless.
Yeah.
So it's Dennis, Joey, Gina, and a couple other characters.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I know there's a black character who I think was done for the cartoon.
I think you're right, yes.
I don't know if the other one is Tommy or
Stuart. There's
Stuart,
a couple of ones, but I'm not sure.
Definitely not Petey, who's in the next segment.
Yeah.
But it's his pals. He's got a lot of pals.
He does, yeah.
And he's clearly the leader of this group. I mean, he's wearing the chief headdress.
He is.
Which in one of the episodes of the regular show, he had one of those too.
Yes. Well, it's funny how so many things changed and so many didn't from 30 years before, but
right.
It was a different time.
So he does help Henry solve his necktie business, which I guess is classic Dennis, helping.
Yeah.
By just cutting off the necktie, and then the briefcase flies around Henry's face and slams him in the foot.
Yeah, it lands on his foot. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it solves one problem and creates another.
Yes.
Injuring his toe.
Right. But they get sent upstairs and told not to come downstairs. The problem, though, is that some of the kids are hungry.
Yeah, well, they should be.
Yeah, I think specifically Joey.
Now,
Joey, I just want to, because when I was watching the regular show, he's in the pilot, and I guess he's in some episodes of that, but this phrase kept coming up. He's canonically a moron, right?
He is.
Yes.
He's a paste eater, I think.
Paste eater,
It's safe to say, yes.
Yeah.
Now, he's supposed to be a little bit younger than Dennis.
Right.
So he's like, Dennis is like the older figure to him. And Dennis, I think, was originally supposed to be like 5 years old.
Right. That's the age, I think, but he seems a little older here.
Yeah.
He can write.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he seems more like 7 or 8 in something in the series, I'd
Yeah.
say. And on the TV, the live action, we'll get to that.
Yes. Yeah. So, Dennis, he doesn't use the word semantic, but he said we can't go downstairs, but we can go down the banister.
Yeah.
So they all slide down and they crash into Henry. He yells at them.
Now, that's an example of Dennis being mischievous because he knows full well what his dad meant.
Right.
And we know that he's using a semantic argument, but he knows that he wasn't supposed to do even that.
Yes. And I'm sure he's not supposed to slide down the banister in general.
Well, yeah, that's a good point, too, yes.
So they get sent back upstairs, but then Henry gets the bright idea to get Mr. Wilson to take care of them. He has to bargain with Wilson to have him, he's going to take him out of town. I think they land on 4 weekends.
Yes. After he proposes 1, Wilson proposes 8 weekends that he's taking Dennis out of town, and then they land on 4.
And Wilson actually goes up in the argument at one point to 12.
It was worth a try, I
Yeah,
guess.
and just Phil Hartman's performance of Mr. Wilson is one of my favorite things on this. It is my favorite thing on this show. So he's doing a version of the what is it, the colonel or the captain from
Like
Bilko.
the Paul Ford
Yes.
character, yes.
Right. So instead of Bilko, Dennis.
Yeah, and he's doing that a lot of the time.
Yes.
Because he's yelling a lot of the time.
Yes. Yes.
This is maybe one of his more sedate appearances that I remember.
Yeah. And so now in there's the CBS episodes is Maurice LaMarche taking over. But Phil Hartman did the bulk of them.
Double duty.
Around the time he was on SNL, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Mid to late 80s. So good for him.
Great performance. And he's
And I feel like I read an interview or something where he talked about like choosing that voice.
it makes sense, and it's fun to hear him as Henry too.
Yes, yeah.
I like his performance as Henry Mitchell too.
Right. So Wilson goes up and he just has to sit in the room with them, which is hilarious.
Yeah, so like Dennis's bedroom, I guess.
Yeah.
He locks them in.
Yes.
And just sits there, and I guess they're just going to sit there.
But they're supposed to be quiet. He yells, and Dennis, Dad said to be quiet.
Yeah.
But they're still hungry, and we see a little bit of the dinner going on, and it's all nice and everything. And
yeah, Alice put together a pretty nice meal
Yes, she
on
did.
short notice. I give her credit.
Then we see Dennis and the kids climbing down a rope out of the window, and turns out they also tied up Mr. Wilson to his chair. And they go down, and somehow they cause some chaos under the table, and rough food ends up all over the boss.
Yeah, family dog Ruff, who's not in the live action series, but a big part of the comics.
But then it all works out because that boss was a wigwam chief back in the day.
Yeah, it was a big part of his life, I guess.
And so then there's a little shot of him and the other kids, or the kids sitting in a circle, and Henry and Alice commenting on it. And then it ends with Wilson is falling out of the window on the chair and is hopping across the yard.
Yes.
And falls over his fence, and there's an iris out or an iris in, whatever, closing in on his face. And he's
Yes.
He is mad at Henry.
And Henry says to Alice, like, he's really disappointed that Mr. Wilson didn't stay with the kids. And he said, well, I guess he just wanted the easy way out.
Yes.
Just
the background.
Yeah. I'm not sure that the producers of the show were intending for a sensitive look at Native American culture, this wigwam club business, but other than like appropriating it, at least they didn't have anything really as blatantly offensive as you might have feared.
Right, yes. And in general, this seems to me in keeping with the spirit of the comic, the newspaper comic.
Totally, yeah. It's basically, it's like the whole thing, really. It's like, kind of playing cowboys and Indians, which Dennis did love. He loved being a cowboy usually, though.
Yes.
His favorite TV star was Cowboy Bob. He loved him. But yeah, this is a interesting first segment. Very short, it felt.
Yeah, I think the middle segment is the longest one.
Yeah, this must have been the shortest of the three. But
so next one, Mr. Dennis Stein, and we see Dennis and his friend Petey.
I believe it's PB.
Oh, PB.
Yes, PB, which I think PEEBEE, but I think the PB is like for his initials.
Okay.
And I can't remember what it stands for, but I think it's supposed to stand for something like a tribute to some kind of great
nerd
mind of yes.
So
put that in the show notes. But
I know we were watching with Lori, and she said, "Oh, he's got glasses. He must be smart."
Yeah, she knows.
Yeah, and a very weird look.
Yeah, I'm not
so
sure.
So glasses, but a baseball cap, and I mean he's in short pants.
Yeah,
not shorts. I would say they're short pants.
Yeah,
he's got a tie.
Good distinction there. Yep.
Jacket, a tie. I think a pink shirt and pink socks, and nothing wrong with that. It's just an interesting design overall.
It's distinctive.
Yes, and yes, he does talk like this.
Yeah. Of course.
But they're over by a department store, and there's a guy taking a mannequin out of the window, and I said, and that guy's snooty.
Oh, he sure is.
Yes,
you were right on that one.
and he takes it out and puts it in the trash, and they ask if they could have it for a science project. Well, I couldn't turn down science.
Yes,
something like that.
Kind of to me, he's like a cross between Franklin Pangborn, John Lovitz as in the critic.
Yeah,
the little Thurston Howell thrown in, I guess.
Yes,
the vocal inflections
and a very weird design too.
Yeah,
he's got that tiny mustache, but his skull is very like his eyebrows are way up on his head, and I mean it's like a frog or something.
They had some fun with this. The kind of character you don't get anymore in pop culture, the floor walker of a department store.
Yeah,
that sort of guy that runs things and looks out for trouble and everything. You just don't have that anymore.
No, but so they take They take this mannequin back to Dennis's basement, and PB installs a little computer in its chest, and he rattles off some numbers. I don't remember what the numbers are, but
Yeah, there was something.
I don't think they're great anymore. But
I think he said the computer that he was installing could calculate like 40 times faster than a human brain.
yes,
And something about 600 megahertz or something.
yeah. And it looks like just a little tape recorder. But
I like how he thinks Dennis is going to be impressed by those statistics.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think Dennis really cared about the numbers.
600. That's huge.
Wow, the previous version was only 500 times. You're really making great, solid, incremental progress, BB.
Also, it can toast bread.
Oh, it can toast a bread, yes. Oh,
And apparently storing an entire loaf inside.
yeah.
But they're going to bring it to life, Frankenstein style. Mm-hmm. I don't know. They got a whole bed set up and wires attached to it.
Yeah, this has been in the works for a while.
Yes. And again, it's in Dennis's basement, not PB's basement.
Yeah, I don't know why, but maybe PB just doesn't have, maybe they got a finished basement. They can't,
Maybe
spread out. And,
he lives in an apartment.
yeah, that could be.
We need to live in a house, Mom. It works. It knocks out some of the power in the house, blows a fuse. But once they get him up and walking, that takes some adjustment. Mm-hmm. But PB, no, some of the sprockets are wrong.
Yeah.
We don't see any sprockets, but there's something wrong with them.
Maybe it makes an adjustment.
Yeah. They name him Frankie, not after Frankenstein, but
Yeah.
after his favorite inventor, Benjamin Franklin.
It's a nice touch.
Yeah. And it can talk. It can make jokes. Or I don't know if it's making jokes as much as being literal, I guess. Yeah. These, say something, Frankie, and something.
Yeah.
Then PB's like, okay, I need to go call our teacher and give her the good news. And so I thought he was going upstairs, but he actually, I guess he went home.
Yeah. Well, it's polite, I guess, to not use the Mitchell's phone, but geez.
Yes.
I think they would have let him do that.
Yeah, and leaves Dennis in charge.
Yeah.
For a genius, he's not very smart.
Yeah, I don't know why he had to leave the creation. I mean, did the teacher really need to know right this minute?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Not right in the 5 minutes it takes him to get home, and
Yeah.
they can wait that long.
And is this even a weekday? Is this a school day or a...
I don't know.
And have I mentioned, my disappointment that they don't get into a big discussion about the ethics of creating life? And,
Yes.
Okay. I'll stop then.
Yeah. Who do you think is more a genius, PB or Dilton?
Ooh, I think PB's accomplishments are unparalleled, I think. But Dilton seems to have more of an awareness of the ramifications of what he does.
Yes.
So Dilton, I think PB probably has more pure genius, but Dilton has more maturity, which is understandable considering he's at least, 10 years older.
Right.
So I guess I'm kind of copping out,
Yeah.
I guess to answer your question, I'd say PB, when PB gets to be Dilton's age, watch out.
Okay. Where does Urkel fall in? You don't have to answer that.
Okay, I get it. I can't. You put me on the spot there. I got to ponder that one more.
Right. PB definitely doesn't seem to, he's maybe too young to have ethics yet.
Yeah.
He's just excited about science.
Right. He needs a governor.
So while he's gone, of course, Dennis immediately takes Frankie upstairs. Frankie proves that he can imitate any voice because PB installed a
voice duplicator.
Voice duplicator, yes, in his computer.
Yeah, that was clever.
And Dennis, because Dennis wants some food, and then he feeds Frankie some food, which I thought that was going to be the problem.
Yeah. Oh, like it would.
Yeah, it would clog
mess
up
up
the
the
gears.
circuitry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And then he tells him to hop outside, and he'll go get his ball and bat, and he's going to teach him to catch. And so he literally hops out the window, I think, and lands in a wagon, and then takes his wild ride through town.
Yeah.
And ends up back at the department store. So, Dennis comes out and he finds out he's gone and does do the responsible thing. He's like, I better get PB.
Yeah.
And luckily, PB has a mannequin detector that he invented. Little box with a radar dish, and whenever it finds a mannequin signal, a finger pops up out of it.
Yes.
Points
the way.
Yes. So they go down to the department store, and the mannequin's causing a little trouble. He already freaked out the snooty guy.
That's true.
And then for some reason he thinks, I don't know, they're going to make him stay there.
Yeah.
That didn't make a lot of sense.
He's like terrified of them.
Yes. And so they have this big chaotic chase through the department store, and he keeps having sort of costume changes. And, he runs through a rack of women's clothing, comes out in a dress, various suits and stuff, till his battery dies.
And it's not a very attractively laid out department store either.
No.
You would think, as big as it is with that much space, it's really kind of more like warehouse style with like a lot of racks of clothes just kind of like, standing around, and not that impressive a store.
That guy's probably extra snooty because of that.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But his battery's dying, and he's talking like Hal at the end of 2001. And, the only solution apparently, well, another employee comes by and says, oh, we were missing a mannequin. That must be it.
Yeah.
So why was the other guy throwing it away?
Yeah.
Clearly there's some communication issues here.
I think so. There may be some big problems with this department store.
Yeah. And they put him back in the window, which is what he was afraid of, but now he's there.
Yeah.
And then Dennis and PB are outside kind of lamenting this, and then Frankie winks at them.
Yeah, like Dennis says he'll visit him all the time,
Yeah.
which is a nice little ray of hope for Frankie.
Yeah.
And then PB says, oh, he can't hear a word you're saying.
That's right. And he pops some toast out.
Yeah. And then he winks at them. So are we to believe that he's accepted his lot in life now, or is he like trapped here and
Right.
Is actually aware and
Yes.
doomed to live in the complete boredom?
I'm going to take the wink as an acceptance.
Okay.
I think he would have expressed it differently if he were trapped.
I would hope so, yeah. Like blink rapidly several times or something like
Yes,
that.
right. Or spin his head around.
Yeah.
Explode.
Yeah. Like burn the toast to a crisp
Yeah.
to make it inedible.
Yes. Yeah. It's a little different.
Yeah,
Speed.
a thoughtful parable on the dangers of artificial intelligence.
Well ahead of its time. Hopefully PB learned from this about creating life.
Maybe he did, yeah.
Or he's going to move on to his next wild invention.
It could be. That's probably more likely.
So the last one is the lean green jumping machine. Yes, lean green jumping machine. Is that all of them? Was there a
I
mean
think
in
so.
there?
I think it was lean green,
Okay.
just lean green jumping machine, I think.
And, when we saw that title, I said, well, that's going to be about a frog.
Yeah, you called it.
And sure enough, it was, but it certainly didn't turn out how I expected.
No, me neither.
So that starts with Dennis writing a letter to, I think, his cousin.
Yes, cousin Albert. And I'm kind of wondering, I don't remember this. I wonder if they did this like rarely on the show, like had this like gimmick of like Dennis writing to Albert to tell, to narrate a story.
Yeah.
It didn't really need it at all in this case.
No.
But I think that might have been a regular thing they did, but I'm not.
I mean, it
not
was,
sure.
I guess it was a little helpful to explain Mark Twain days.
Yeah.
They have Mark Twain days. One of his favorite holidays.
Yeah. Go figure.
And everyone dresses up as Mark Twain characters, like Tom Sawyer's and Becky
Yeah.
Thatcher's. And
Yeah, I guess pretty much kind of a narrow subset of Mark Twain
Yes.
novels, I believe. But
yeah. Yeah, nobody's dressed up as the Prince of the Pauper.
no, I didn't see that either.
The
No.
Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court.
Right.
And they do things like they have a frog jumping contest, and all the kids get together to whitewash fences.
Yeah. What a fun activity. No wonder Dennis loves this day so much.
Yeah. Figure at least it would have shown him conning everyone else into
Yeah.
doing it. He does try to splash paint on Margaret.
Yeah, he's kind of mean to her. She's not really doing anything
No.
to them. He's
She's
just
sort
kinda
of like bossing them around, right?
Yeah. I mean, she just kind of shows up and I guess is maybe being a little obnoxious, but he just kind of goes right into like threatening to
Yeah.
do paint and just kind of like teasing her, like
Right.
waving the brush, because she's got this Becky Thatcher outfit she doesn't want to get paint on.
Yeah. And then they go off to look for a frog for Gina. And Dennis already has one named Willie. And they find a bunch of frogs with Willie's help. And she finds the one she wants, but I believe she's having trouble catching it or trouble training it.
Yeah.
And a comet streaks across the sky. And then a mysterious figure in a white suit shows up. A gentleman. He's got a big mustache, a cigar.
And of course, it's Colonel Sanders.
Yes, that's right. And he teaches them how to make frog legs.
They taste just like chicken.
Yeah. Oh, it's a gentleman named Sam Clemens.
Oh, yes, that's right.
And he teaches them you got to whisper to the frog their favorite, or the thing they want to hear most. Yes. So, and that helps them. Like Dennis tells Willie he's going to give him peanut butter.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually they get to the frog contest.
Yes.
Of course, Mr. Wilson is in charge. He's the MC. He's wearing the suspenders that he loves, apparently. There's some dopey kid fishing.
Yeah.
I don't know who that kid is.
I don't
I
know.
like him. But he catches his fishing pole, which is made out of a hiking stick, on the suspenders and hurls them into the pond. And they have the contest, and Sam is there. And he's in it. And I think all the frogs, or most of the frogs, end up jumping in a bowl of punch that Margaret's carrying. The second time this has happened.
Yeah.
And his frog wins. So he gets a trophy.
Sam's.
Sam's. Yes, Sam's. And then they're like off in the woods again. And like, what did you tell your frog to win? I was going to set him free. And he does. And Gina and Dennis decide to follow suit, and Gina's frog runs out into the wild, hops out into the wild, and Dennis's frog hops back on his head.
Yeah.
I guess he knows where he wants to be.
Yeah.
And then Samuel Clemens walks into the mist and just disappears. Then the comet streaks across the sky again, but he leaves his trophy, and they look at it and it has a picture of him on it, and they realize that Samuel Clemens and Mark Twain are the same person.
Amazing.
Amazing, yeah.
What a tale.
I was gonna say, none of the adults said anything. One about this guy
Yeah.
wandering around with their kids, but that he looks like Mark Twain. But I guess they would probably just think he was a guy dressed up as Mark Twain.
Yeah.
It's Mark Twain days. Why not?
Right. Maybe it never occurred to them, but hey, you could dress up like Mark Twain.
Yes.
Nobody ever thought of that before.
Right.
Well, he left quite an impression, though, on this Mark Twain day.
Yeah, it's one they'll always talk about it.
I think so, yeah. And apparently nobody noticed the comet either.
Right, yeah.
They were so wrapped up in the Mark Twain days festivities, the fishing and the frog jumping.
Or that it was briefly night.
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty amazing in and of itself. Wasn't
Yeah.
it?
You don't see this on the Wednesday Dennis the Menace.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, this is pretty ambitious.
Yeah. I don't know that Dennis is aware of Mark Twain yet.
I don't think so. I could see him that would be the kind of thing where they would go to the Mark Twain museum or something, and the parents would be into it, and then Dennis would be off, causing havoc somewhere.
Yeah.
Like in the gift shop or something.
Right.
Not really that interested in Mark Twain. That's an interesting bit of character business for this Dennis, though, that he loves Mark Twain days and is really into it.
Right.
Dressing up as Tom Sawyer and all that. Good for him. Maybe he's got a Classics Illustrated comic of Tom Sawyer, and he loves it.
You think? I wonder if this was fulfilling some sort of educational obligation.
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, they weren't really merchandising this in the same, as far as I know. I mean, it's not like a G.I. Joe cartoon.
Unfortunately, no. I don't remember a lot of Dennis the Menace toys
no.
back in the day.
I kind of would like PSA, like Mr. Wilson doing PSAs.
Oh, yeah. Like it's...
Not Dennis. I just want Mr. Wilson to.
Yeah. You got to preserve Dennis's mischievous nature.
Yeah.
He's perpetually learning. Wilson knows everything.
That's right. Yeah, I think, these three segments captured the spirit of this version of Dennis the Menace pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Got some antics. Got some narrative leaps.
Right.
Little Mr. Wilson yelling. Little Mr. Mitchell yelling.
Yeah, some chaos.
Some chaos.
Yeah, three pretty different kinds of stories. Yeah, this is pretty representative, I would agree, of the cartoon as a whole.
Yes. And before we leave the cartoon, we should mention that, well, one, Alan Thicke's son, Brennan, is the voice of Dennis. Mm. And two, another Thicke appeared in the credits. Lori caught that. Todd Thicke is one of the writers.
Yeah.
And she looked into this Todd Thicke. Alan Thicke's brother, or half-brother, depending on your source, was not only wrote for Dennis the Menace, but not surprisingly, Thicke of the Night. He was involved with an Anne-Marie Christmas special, other Canadian-type things.
Yeah.
And was the head writer, the chief writer on America's Funniest Home Videos.
Yeah, I had no idea of any of this.
And also wrote some songs, I think.
Yeah, apparently he did.
Yeah.
Some TV theme songs, yeah.
So, I mean, his name jumped out in a list of dozens of writers.
Yes. I assume they had the same writing credit for, one of those things with the same writing credit for every episode.
Yeah,
yeah. That was kind of interesting. Where you can get some more information about Todd Thicke? Wikipedia.
We should register that. That weapon. But then you have to cover Robin Thicke.
Yeah.
You're not doing due diligence on Wikipedia if you.
Yeah.
Also, that could be misconstrued somehow.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah. Well, solid joke.
Maybe there is one, because
yes.
I do have some unanswered questions about the extended Thicke family now as a result of this. So
yeah,
we'll have to check that out.
So yeah.
So should we move on to the live action, Dennis?
Yeah, maybe you can fill in some basic information here.
Well, it's kind of interesting. The live action Dennis was on 4 seasons on CBS, and I think the whole time it was before Ed Sullivan.
And what did it follow? I know I read that. Was it like The Virginian or something?
It was, well, at least on this night, it followed Lassie.
Lassie, that's right.
Yeah. So that's a pretty good family hour pairing, right? Lassie and Dennis the Menace.
And it replaced Leave It to Beaver.
Yes, I believe it did. Leave It to Beaver moved networks, I think.
Yeah.
But in again, kind of something that's come up before, it had 146 episodes.
Yeah.
So 4 seasons. So, even, I'm sure as you were going through, you'd see season 1 had 32 episodes, and then the other 3 had 38 episodes each. Yeah. It's amazing.
It is.
I mean, it was on in new ones 3/4 of the year. It's kind of amazing, really. And then I mentioned Nick at Night. Nick at Night added it in 1985 and ran it for years.
Yeah.
Now it's available on many different streaming services and on home video if you want to watch it that way. But this particular episode we picked was the 50,000th Customer, and it premiered November 12th, 1961. So it was on CBS. So you had Lassie, Dennis, Ed Sullivan at 8, and by the way, Pearl Bailey and Frank Gorshin were on that episode of Ed Sullivan.
Hey.
At 9 o'clock, it was kind of like something called Star Witness, was kind of like a play of the week kind of thing with Barbara Stanwyck and Lloyd Bridges.
Whoa.
And a half-hour drama presentation, which is interesting. Jack Benny, the Jack Benny program was at 9:30, welcoming guest Jimmy Stewart and his wife. Candid Camera at 10, and What's My Line at 10:30.
What a night.
Yeah, pretty good lineup of TV, huh?
Yeah.
Well, CBS was kind of the king back then. ABC. Now, for ABC, I think I have incomplete information. I think they were a distinct number 3 around this time, and I didn't have as much of a schedule, I guess, maybe. But so it starts with Lawman at 8:30, Bus Stop, a dramatic anthology series at 9, and Adventures in Paradise, based on like the works of James Michener, I believe, at 10. Kind of like tropical adventure, intrigue, and stuff. And so NBC had 7 o'clock Bullwinkle, 7:30 Walt Disney, and it was like Light in the Forest Part 1. So it was kind of one of those things where they'd have half of something and then you'd see the second half the next week. 8:30, one of my favorites, Car 54, Where Are You? Bonanza at 9 o'clock. And this is interesting, at 10 o'clock, like the DuPont show of the week, The Wonderful World of Toys, a little teledrama with Harpo Marx from the Marx Brothers and also Carol Burnett.
Wow.
And this is a program that's available. There's a Shout Factory set that has like the Marx Brothers appearances on TV, but there was an anthology program, and I think this was Harpo Marx's last appearance on television.
And what was between Disney and Car 54?
Nothing. It was one of those things where the Disney program was 7:30 to 8:30.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I see.
Like some scheduling that they did back then. So
Yep.
that was
That's a pretty good night of TV too.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Pretty interesting. So Sunday, November 12th, 1961. And this episode is from the 3rd season of Dennis the Menace. And I guess we might as well say it now. Joseph Kearns, who was a regular on the radio Jack Benny show, he died during the 3rd season of Dennis the Menace and was replaced by Gail Gordon. And I get the feeling that, that was a big blow to the show.
Yeah.
And it seems like Dennis had very good ratings for the first couple seasons and then tailed off big time after, Mr. Wilson, they changed Wilson's.
Yes. And I mean, nothing wrong with Gail Gordon.
No, it was a solid hand.
Yes.
And he was playing a different character, actually, which I forgot. He was
his
playing
brother.
Like his brother, not actually replacing Mr. Wilson.
Yeah.
Literally. But
Right. And Jay North was getting a little long in the tooth at that point.
I think even by the episode we're talking about here, I'm kind of getting the feeling, to me, like the early episodes are much better partly because he just physically is younger. And it's getting a little bit much even by now, I think.
And I guess the 4th season, he stopped wearing overalls.
No,
that just seems wrong.
That's just you're going. You just need to end it at that point. You got to have the overalls.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. And Jay North kind of had a troubled after Dennis' life, so I don't want to make light of it. But this is kind of the thing. I mean, this is what happens is you're a certain age and you naturally age out of the role a little bit, and that's got to be difficult. And even if the show was like hitting on all cylinders, it would probably irritate him playing essentially the same age.
Yeah, I think at age, I mean, he didn't just physically age out, but he wasn't interested anymore. Yeah. I mean, he did eventually, I guess, turn things around and turn his experiences into some good to try to help other child actors, and at least his mother did the right thing with his money, but it does sound like bad stuff.
Yeah, and
happened during the show too.
Yeah. And he might not be my vision of the quintessential Dennis, but he's fine in the role of what he's doing, and I'd say it's pretty an iconic child performance in its own right. His ongoing thing of Dennis, so and popular at the time.
But it is, I mean, like you said, Mr. Wilson is definitely the sort of co-lead, and it's amazing. I mean, just looking at episode descriptions and how many of them either have him in the description or the title.
Yeah.
It is definitely a distinct sort of character, like as we'll see here, kind of full of himself, and not blustery as we said, but
yeah, a little.
He's always he fits in that mold of a lot of characters from that time of being full of himself.
Yeah, kind of the stooge heel thing a little bit.
Yeah,
where he's got like a little pompous and kind of needs to be taken down a peg, but he's capable of being taken down a peg.
Yes,
within an episode, so he's not irredeemable and not totally. He's got that little bit of likability to him. Yeah. It's a good performance. Joseph Kearns was like I don't know. He's just kind of an interesting. He doesn't physically look like the Wilson of the comic book so much, but although Mrs. Wilson does, I mean, but it's really good. And Henry is spot on. That's amazing how much he looks like him.
Yeah, which I guess it's not that hard, but it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get a thin guy and give him
Yeah.
some glasses and a pipe.
I mean, he was made to make that. And now, what's interesting too is like Gloria Henry, Dennis's mother, Alice Mitchell.
Yeah.
She almost looks like a totally different person. Like a couple of seasons ago.
Yes.
Like, to the point where when we were watching, Lori, asked.
I had the same thing.
Not without reason. Is that the same actress?
Right. The first season, she's a dish.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there is. It's kind of like typical TV thing where I forget what it is, but there is a slight age difference, but not like an outlandish one between Herbert Anderson and her.
It's like 10 years or something. Right?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So it is pretty significant, but she becomes a little bit more matronly.
Yes.
Is that fair to say by the third season?
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was intentional or not. It seems like they changed, some things, and
seems like her hair is darker.
Yeah, she did not look. She looked much less like the Alice of the comics.
Yeah.
And I might not have recognized her at first myself. So.
And I just want to say too, it's worth your while to watch the pilot episode because
yeah,
Dennis is kind of a monster in that one.
He is.
It's hilarious.
It's a really good episode.
Yeah.
It's maybe one of the best the series, I think. And yeah, so that's something it's good to bring up. Like multiple sources just say that CBS made them tone down the character in the show after like some indeterminate number of episodes. And the way the TV, I'm not sure exactly how that worked. I'm kind of curious as when the demarcation is, but I think there is like in the earlier episodes in general.
Right.
He's a little bit more just devious.
Yes.
Because in that first episode he seems like it's not like innocent. It seemed like at some point the show became more like him being well-meaning and causing trouble.
Yes.
But in the earlier ones, no, he's actually like more devious about just getting what he wants and not really listening to what he's supposed to be doing.
Yes, and being kind of at times passive aggressive and at times just aggressive.
Yeah.
I mean, it ends. We don't see it, but we hear about it. It ends with Mr. Wilson in jail, which is an accident.
Yeah.
In terms of all the other things that happened. But there's a lot of deception going on.
All because he wants to go to the movies.
Yes, right. This Glenn Ford movie.
Yeah, that's...
And that was interesting. Because Alice and Henry are going. Alice wants to go to watch. She's like, I'll be holding your hand and Henry Mitchell's hand and leaning against him, but I'll be looking at Glenn Ford.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
How can anybody compete with Glenn Ford, back in the late 50s, I tell you.
So, but this episode opens as they all do with a little tease of some Dennis chaos. He comes in with his fishing pole, and Henry says that he asks if fishing season is open, and Henry's like, yeah, but I'm too busy to take you fishing right now. And he's like, that's okay. I'm going fishing in the fountain in the park with Tommy because they put some fish in there. And then he's like, tell Mom we're having goldfish for dinner.
Yeah.
And Henry's chasing him out
Runs
the door.
after him. Yeah, this seemed to be like a regular thing where they do like a little cold open gag or whatever, unrelated to the rest of the show.
Yeah. So the show proper opens. It's breakfast time. Henry's reading the paper, and it's that time of year when Finch's Drugstore has its big contest. The 50,000th customer win 5 whole minutes of free shopping.
It's a pretty small store, too.
Yeah. Actually, when I saw the store, I'm like, 5 minutes.
I'm actually impressed by 5 minutes.
Yeah. And Dennis wonders, how can you fit that many people in there?
Yeah.
And Henry explains for our benefit, I think that it's the 50,000th customer overall over the past year. Mm-hmm. Somehow, old man Finch has been keeping track of this, and they're all talking about the things that they would get. Henry would get some of those expensive briar pipes.
Yeah.
Alice would get perfume. And Dennis supposes a person couldn't carry out a whole soda fountain, but thinks he'd try.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing this soda fountain actually.
No, I don't know.
With that whole
it might have been
lunch counter and
yeah, I don't remember that either. But it was there.
The camera side, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And the other rule is that if you go in during this period of the contest, you have to purchase something. So then we go over to the Wilsons, and Mr. Wilson is already strategizing. He's got clipboards. He's got things posted on walls. He has hired someone to help him out.
Yeah,
he's not paying much, but he's hired someone. And he's working on this giant adding machine and making some totals. When, of course, Dennis barges in and offers to help. He always helps his dad with his totaling. And he ends up punching the repeat key. And so this little, just long ticket comes out.
Yeah, wasting a lot of that paper.
Yes. And
again, Mr. Wilson's retired, so he has time to do this kind of thing.
Like, how old do you think he's supposed to be?
I always thought he's about like 60.
Yeah, I would say at least 60.
I mean, it's kind of hard because, again, that whole thing with people back then. But just the fact that he's retired back then leads me to think that, a start there.
Right. And what year again? This is 1961.
Yeah.
And Joseph Kearns was born in 1907.
Yeah.
So he's like 54.
Yeah. Yeah, in his
Something
mid
like
50s at the most. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but he definitely seems older.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I'm going to say he's playing older.
Yeah, I think so.
I can't imagine in a few years sitting around in my sweater being annoyed by the neighbor kid. Anyway, he's like, well, it's okay. I'm going to go down to, I need to check on some numbers down at Finch's. And Dennis offers to go with him. And he's like, oh, I want to go alone. And Dennis, in common with the cartoon one, has a semantic difference. He's like, all right, I'll just meet you down there. I'll take a shortcut and meet you. And at Finch's, we see Mrs. Elkins, who I've saw in at least one other episode. Definitely seems to be Wilson's nemesis.
Yeah, she was a recurring character.
Bit of a busybody. Clearly doesn't like him at all. It seems to, what I can tell, want to ruin his reputation.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Like those two just don't get along, and it's, again, it's one of those things too, where like the other characters, like in the Dennis the Menace world, like are fine with that.
Yeah,
like it seems like a relatively tight community. Like even I think Mrs. Wilson just accepts the fact that her husband's got some other woman in the neighborhood is trying to like ruin his life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that actually. That everybody else just accepts that. Oh, okay, well they just his nemesis.
Yeah,
let it go.
I mean, this episode also makes it kind of clear that, I mean, it seems like he's a little disliked by other people. Like Finch clearly does not like him.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And he doesn't really like Finch, but she's fishing for trying to find out what number she is, and Finch is like, oh, somewhere this side of 50,000th, and Wilson outside asks his help, Billy. I assume his help would be some kid.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know if he's a detective or
he
just some, like, I don't know, out of work old guy.
Yeah.
But he's been out there taking notes, and there's 72 customers so far, which lines up, I think, with Wilson's numbers exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And Dennis is waiting at the door and tries to ask about Billy, but Wilson brushes him off and reminds him inside, don't touch anything unless you're buying it. And then there's like a running gag through the whole thing of like Dennis picking up stuff and Finch gently removing it from his hands. and Dennis, I want to buy everything, but I don't have any money. So Wilson is browsing and taking notes, and he checks out some movie camera, and Dennis says hi to Mrs. Elkins, and she doubts Mr. Wilson will win, but Dennis asked her if talking fast cuts her mouth, because Mr. Wilson said she has the sharpest tongue in town.
Ouch.
Now there is a comic strip kind of.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was trying to say
yeah.
earlier. And she gives some snide remark and goes out. But Finch takes her side, and Wilson vows to win and clean you out.
Yeah, I mean, he's still going to be in the community, and the drugstore's still going to be. Do you want to just put him out of business? I mean, Wilson's like really is kind of mean about it.
Yeah. Later, Dennis fetches Henry and Alice to come help Mr. Wilson with something, and Wilson wants them to bring a box camera, 2 pipes, 6 empty perfume bottles, and a sun lamp. And then it turns out he's using tables and various objects. He's set up a 3-dimensional map of the drugstore in his backyard.
It's pretty impressive.
It is. Yeah.
And even in his crude way, the layout of this imaginary store is more impressive than the department store in the Mr. Dennis signed cartoon we talked about.
Right. And he wants Henry to time him as he goes through it. And there's a little aside where Martha tells Alice that he's too serious, and Alice like, men are always too serious, and the sillier it gets, the more serious they are. It seemed kind of true.
Yeah, I can't really argue with that, I guess.
Also, for some reason, I liked Wilson saying that he was gonna clean out Finch at the vitamin counter.
Oh yeah.
Dennis wants someone else to watch, so he runs off, and then Wilson is doing his practice with the stopwatch that he bought for this purpose. And frankly, I mean, he's getting a lot of stuff, but he's putting it all in his arms. I don't know. I guess they didn't have shopping baskets back then.
I guess not.
And then Dennis comes back with Fremont, the Wilson's dog, who Mr. Wilson trips over him, drops everything, and breaks a $2 pipe of Henry's, and offers to either give him $2 now or buy him a $10 pipe when he wins. And Henry takes the cash.
Now, of course, in today's money, $2, that would be about like $4,620.
Yeah.
So that's an expensive pipe, actually.
It is an expensive pipe. Yeah, and Dennis bought it for him for Christmas.
Yeah.
Where did Dennis earn $4,600?
I don't know. That's a good question. You just have to accept it.
That's a lot of lawns to mow.
Yeah, maybe trading in bottles for the deposits.
Yeah. I bet he drank root beer bottles.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to drink 8 gallons of root beer and trade in the bottles. So there's another scene of Wilson totaling, and he figures that exactly 3:27 tomorrow is the time to go. But Mrs. Wilson and Alice are going to go down there anyway because they got to get something, and or just to check things out. And Mr. Wilson also promised to give Dennis a football, and Wilson because you want to see the triumph of the scientific approach. And Dennis says, "No, I just want a football."
Yeah. I can't blame him.
But Wilson, when he's going to check his figures, he reaches for his pipe and his tobacco, or gets Dennis to bring him his tobacco, and there's none in the pouch. So he's going to have to go down after all. Besides, he wants to give Finch the needle.
Yeah.
So he goes back and he's being all haughty again, and then he's going to prove his knowledge of where everything is. And he reaches for the pipes and picks up a yo-yo, and it turns out that Finch has moved all this stuff to high shelves, which... That's his right, but it's kind of dirty pool.
It is.
It seems directed totally at Wilson.
Yeah, apparently because this is a traditional thing, and it's clear that he hasn't done this before.
Yeah.
So it looks like this is in direct response to Wilson, who was way too blatant about his scheming, I think. So he brought it on himself.
And then the next day, it's a big day. Wilson is in a big line with Dennis, and it's 3:22. He's also brought a stepladder. Still didn't bring a basket, but he brought a stepladder. But the line is moving too quickly, so he keeps switching places with people. And there's a thing where a man and then a woman, and he tells the woman, "No, you can go ahead and be with your husband." She's like, "Not my husband."
It's like, you should see the one I got.
Yeah. And he wants to do a little more shifting, and it turns out Mrs. Elkins is behind him, and they get into a big argument. People wanting them to go ahead, and like someone needs to go in so the line can keep moving.
And at this point, it looks like Finch's promotion does do good business for him because there's a huge line to go out just to get into the drugstore.
Right. Everybody's got to buy something.
Atypical, yeah.
Yeah. And so Dennis like, "I'll go in," and of course he wins. And Mr. Wilson he goes home. He's depressed, and Finch is kind of put out that that Dennis won.
Yeah.
But the first thing Dennis grabs is like a hammock. It appears to be on a rack that's on wheels. Mm-hmm. It's all stretched out, and he's going to throw everything in it. Yeah. He wants, and Finch is like, that's not fair. And the customers all stand up for Dennis, which I like that.
Yeah.
They don't know this kid.
Yeah.
If they knew him, they might not stand up for him, but he's being clever.
He is.
And then he runs all around the store, and he's like climbing shelves and all that, and loading up that hammock.
Yeah, it's funny because Finch's initial reaction was, like you said, put off by it, but he should have been thrilled by it because one, a kid wouldn't be able to carry out as much, and two, a kid would probably go after less expensive items.
Right, just a bunch of rack toys or something.
Yeah, yeah. Instead, it turned out that Finch was put off for the wrong reasons because Dennis was actually had a brilliant approach.
Yeah. And then it ends at Mr. Wilson's house, and of course he's all sore still about this, and Dennis arrives and he's being very cheerful about winning, and seemingly seems like maybe he's oblivious to Wilson's feelings, but then it turns out he got all the things that everybody wanted. He got Wilson his camera and binoculars and a pipe and tobacco, got stuff for his parents and his football for himself. And
yeah, it's very sweet the way he does it. He sort of doesn't say it at first, but he says, "Come on, there's more stuff outside." Like, "Oh no, I did, Dennis. Oh, come on," and kind of brings him out there to surprise him. It's nice.
Yeah, and he says it must be great to figure out things the way you do, Mr. Wilson says. Sometimes the things you don't figure out turn out to be even better.
He kind of hugs him really.
Yeah,
at the end, they kind of embrace, and it's a very sweet ending.
Yes, as you said though, it's the baby facing him a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, in both of them really.
Yeah, and especially because he really was Wilson was a bit of a pill the whole episode.
Yeah. It's nice and it's got a nice ending, but yeah, it's and again, that, in its own way, that's probably representative of what this kind of show is like. Like the comics, Dennis is more like causing trouble and doesn't really know what he's doing, let alone know enough to do something like Dennis does here. And if he does know something, he's doing things for the wrong reason. Whereas the TV show has a heart,
Yeah.
So if you're into that kind of thing, I'm not
right.
saying I'm not.
Yeah.
But it's just a totally different kind of experience.
Yeah, and I think some of that is the difference of the medium because the comics are frozen in time. Mm-hmm. You don't really expect him to learn anything.
Yeah,
it's just it's always a day in his life where he's causing trouble.
And there is that thing where CBS was worried, I guess, for parents complaining, or there was apparently some worry that people would imitate Dennis, so they toned him down.
What about people imitating Mr. Wilson?
I guess that's okay.
Old people watching. Yeah, I'm going to yell at this kid.
Well, Wilson did, I guess, it turned out pretty well for him.
Yeah.
He spent a lot of money on this scheme. Well, maybe not a lot of money, but
It does seem like he spent a lot of money.
don't know how much, paying that agent of his, that operative,
Right.
cost him, and he bought a watch just for this exercise. But we should mention too that Finch was played. I don't know if we mentioned Charles Lane, a veteran character actor who was in literally every show, the 50s and 60s, and even into the 70s. I think he lived to be like 102.
Wow.
He acted for like 70 years,
Yeah.
I think. So very recognizable face. Was in like a lot of the Lucy shows and all kinds of things. But he was really good in this.
Yeah.
Again, maybe even playing a little bit older than he was, I think. But seeing him and Wilson go back and forth was pretty funny. I did enjoy that. Just those two being nasty to each other was probably one of my favorite parts of the episode.
Yeah. It's kind of funny that, like, 'cause presumably it's the only drugstore in town.
Yeah.
And he's sort of a well-known figure in town, but
Yeah.
he doesn't have a problem being mean to a customer.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning, it seemed like, oh, this is like a really nice promotion, everything. But then as the episode goes on, like, Finch becomes more and more, it's one thing to be reacting to Wilson, but just some of his interactions with Dennis, just he didn't seem like you said, like not necessarily the pillar of the community you'd expect at first. But I guess he runs a reputable enough business, and good for him. I thought it was then I guess he was relying on the fact that people could only carry out a handful.
Yeah.
Really, it seems like the big provision is not the 5 minutes so much as what you can carry out in presumably only one trip too.
Right.
So
yeah.
he was banking on that, because I thought 5 minutes in that little store seemed like kind of an eternity, really.
Yeah.
If you had something to carry out, and which Dennis figured out, you could use the hammock.
I wonder, they didn't explain that rule, but if it like as soon as you crossed the threshold of the door, it was over.
Yeah, I guess so. You think this is probably the last year of this promotion? I don't think Finch is going to do this next year.
Right. I wonder how much time Mr. Wilson spends, like, time of the year.
Yeah.
Is it months?
Yeah.
Seems like it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, really.
He didn't quite have a murder wall, but
No.
he definitely had a lot of information.
Yeah. Well, he enjoyed it, though. I guess it keeps him busy, and
Yeah.
I've seen in other episodes he's an avid coin collector. So, it's good for a man to have hobbies, but this one might have turned out to have spiraled a little bit out of control.
Gardener, I think.
Yeah?
Yes. And of course, he's Dennis to keep his hands full.
Yeah, he does. And this really shows, like, Dennis, I think he tells Mr. Wilson he's his very best friend, I
Yes.
think, in this episode.
I watched another episode where Dennis had to write a composition for class about his best friend. And first it was going to be Mr. Wilson, and Mr. Wilson didn't know about it and yelled at him about something, which Dennis didn't, he took in stride because he always does. But it got him thinking, well, he has a lot of best friends. So he wasn't sure. But in the meantime, Wilson got all egotistical about it. Like, he's going to write, I can go watch him read this. And then had spent the episode trying to convince Dennis that he was his best friend. And it worked out.
Dennis didn't change course and write the essay about Joey.
No.
My best friend eats paste every day.
Yes.
But I love him anyway.
Yeah. The other choices were Tommy and some kid named Owen, who had given him a big Indian headdress.
Oh, wow.
So, but as Henry explained, it's not just about gifts.
Mm-hmm.
So I think at the end it was, like he broke a lamp at some point, and he's like, even if I break things, he doesn't get too upset about anything. He just goes ahead and fixes it. It's good that Dennis has these blinders.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. I mean, at some point he's got to mature as he goes into adolescence, and
Yeah.
hopefully he'll expand his emotional intelligence a bit. But it is good for now. Yeah.
Yeah. So any other thoughts on Dennis the Menace in TV? And we have to rank the
Yes,
Menace.
I want you to do your rank of menacingness. Yeah, I think I'll just, to me, I look at it, they're two separate entities. The Dennis of the comics is not the Dennis of the TV show, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I do think the Dennis TV show is kind of maybe a bigger thing than you might think in its own right. It's had a long life in syndication and is still around today, so that's a pretty good run for 4 seasons of, it's pretty, I think in its way it can be a little bit a bland kind of family sitcom, I would say, but some of the episodes that I watched were like legitimately funny. That first episode is a really good example of what the show could be, and this episode had with a nice ending and pretty good story. I mean, it's not like as funny as some of the other sitcoms of that era, but
Yeah.
it's a good show, and I think it succeeds at what it's going for.
Yeah. So he's going to be, this is my rankings.
Okay.
Comics, Dennis, most menacing.
All right.
Dairy Queen, second most menacing.
Ooh, interesting.
Mostly because on more than one occasion, I got car sick on the way home.
Oh, no.
Hot dogs. You know.
Oh,
Yeah.
Mike. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
And then it's probably, I don't, like cartoon and TV. I'm going to say TV a little more menacing just because of those early episodes.
Okay, fair.
Because the cartoon, he doesn't seem particularly menacing at all.
He doesn't have much personality at all in the cartoon, does he?
No.
Now that you mention it.
It may be a tie just because of, but that's only because of Wilson's reactions, the performance.
Right, right.
So those are I don't know if you have your own rankings, but I mean, really, Dairy Queen should be there. That's not even Dairy Queen's fault. I got car sick.
Maybe I'll present yours and mine in the power rankings
Oh,
this week
okay.
For this episode, podcast episode.
Yeah, okay.
BattleOfTheNetworkShows.com. So I'll think about it a little bit.
Yeah. Well, maybe you can rank some of Dennis's friends or something too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which friend really is his very best friend?
Yeah. You know, since you ask.
Yes.
Because I've actually been thinking about this because I think it's Joey from my experience.
I always think it's Joey, but then
because they're always hanging out together.
yeah, and I understand why on a TV show you wouldn't.
Yeah.
Especially, they presented him in that pilot episode as mute.
Yeah. Canonical moron.
Yes. Canonical moron. You might want someone more his own speed. Like
Right.
This Tommy guy, who I guess is in the comics too.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. Tommy's a big figure in the comics.
Yeah. Obviously not Margaret. And I didn't watch any episodes with her, but I did see some images, and boy, they really tried to capture that.
Yeah,
didn't they?
yeah.
And I guess Gina was at it at some point. I don't know.
Yeah, I
the
don't
whole
remember.
story.
I don't remember Gina in the TV show at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the comics, she was kind of like the cool one, and her mom made really good pizzas or something. So Dennis loved hanging out with her.
Right, and Dennis has a unconscious crush on her or something.
Like Margaret always wanted to play like stereotypical girl stuff, whereas
Yeah.
Gina I think was content just to hang out with the boys and do what they wanted to do. Too.
Right. Yeah, I would say Joey. Maybe just because he's the most distinct looking. Like, I don't even know what comics Tommy looks like.
You know what? Actually, seriously, who I always thought would make a good Tommy if he were younger? I think, I could be off on this, but I'm thinking like a younger Willie Ames would be like Tommy. And maybe it's just because he was Tommy, Bradford, but I just kind of thought that there was a connection there, maybe.
Does Tommy have a lot of hair?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I mean, compared to Joey's got hardly any.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, Joey's a little thin on top, I think.
Yeah. He's got a little tuft.
Yeah, much like Wilson in the comics, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's one thing too about the TV Dennis, the live action TV Dennis, trying to give him a little bit of a sort of a representation of the classic hair of Dennis.
Yes. The cowlick.
Yeah, the cowlick. That's the word I was looking for. Yes.
Right.
He rocks that.
Yeah,
pretty well,
and the costume is it's just to your mind is used to this very squat sort of thing.
Yeah.
Jay North is not squat.
Right.
But no kid looks that. So.
I don't think so. No.
Yeah.
I mean, they nailed it with the Mr. Mitchell casting. So
yep,
and the Margaret. So
yeah.
That's as good as it gets. So that's enough for me.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that wraps it up. If you have Dennis the Menace thoughts about the American one or the British one, I'd like to hear about this British one more. Mm-hmm. I've just seen pictures. I don't know anything about them. Let us know in our Facebook group or send us an email at mailbag@battleofthenetworkshows.com.
Yeah.
Leave a comment on our website.
Yeah, give us 25 stars, reviews, or whatever they do. We
Right.
don't ask about that, but
yes, like and subscribe on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yes,
do all that.
Yeah,
support the show. And you know what? Maybe we should give a prize to the 50,000th downloader
Listener?
of this podcast
Yes.
episode. What do you think?
Uh-huh.
I'll tell you what. We'll give you five free minutes of podcast listening to the 50,000th listener of the podcast.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that means we have to track all your data, and we,
Yeah. Well, you know what? Maybe we'll think of something else, but we'll work on that.
You're right.
This episode brought to you by a random number generator. This episode also brought to you by Finch's Drugstore. The 50,000th customer wins a 5-minute shopping spree. But let's hope it's not that old drunk Wilson. This episode also brought to you by Dairy Queen Blizzards. Sure, they sound like something Dennis the Menace made up, but they're real. Join us next time for another exciting episode of Battle of the Network Shows. Learn more, leave feedback, and suggest future episodes at battleofthenetworkshows.com. Follow us on Twitter at BatNetShows and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/battleofthenetworkshows.
Dennis!